Hey everyone, and welcome to our webinar for World Poetry Day 2023. It's the 21st of March, and I'm joined by our absolutely wonderful certified coach and published poet, Vijaya Garisankar. Vijaya, thank you so much for being here with me today to talk about World Poetry Day and poetry in general.
Thank you so much, Paul. This is so wonderful. World Poetry Day, very, very close to my heart. So, and I'm excited to be with you and sharing the stage to talk about today and poetry in general.
No, excellent. No, thank you for being here today. If you're tuned in, please say hi, drop your name in the comments box. We'd love to say hello to you. And also, if you want to take part in World Poetry Day with us, we are going to be collaborating together and pulling together a bit of an ebook. You can see the banner across the screen. Post your poem in our hub or submit it to academy@coachingmindsglobal.com to feature in our ebook. So, as part of this World Poetry Day, to include all our members, those who like to write poetry, I would like to encourage you to submit a poem to us so we can collate them together in a brand new Coaching Minds Inspiration Poems ebook. So I just want to make that clear for anybody who's watching the replay. There's an opportunity for you to get involved. Even if you're watching in a few days' time, it's going to take us a couple of weeks to get this pulled together, so it doesn't have to be done today. So, Vijaya, thank you so much for being here again. So, we're here to talk about World Poetry Day, which is all about the celebration of linguistic expression and how that can be translated, how that can be shared and understood across different cultures. So before we start a bit of a chat, Vijay, I'd just like you to share, we've interviewed you before, you've been on a lot of webinars, we've talked about your poetry. Would you mind just giving the viewers a little bit of an overview of your poetry experience? And you have published poetry as well. So just a little bit about what you've done in terms of your poetry kind of career or side hobby, however you like to label it.
Okay. So, for me, like you were telling in the introduction, it's across all cultures, across all languages. So, poetry has a very special place in my heart. Often, when we remember memories of childhood, we remember the stories we've read, and for me, it's also the poems I've read, and some of them which just touched my heart. They were inspirational. They had something in them which was simple storytelling, and those small memories and those nuggets just remain in your heart. And more than English, it was in Hindi. A lot of my poets, at least my favorite poems, my favorite poets were a lot in Hindi and in that, language. So really, somewhere it just sowed a seed, and th- th- there are times in life when you want to express and when you want to say something, and maybe you don't find your voice, or there's so much to say and you don't know who to say to or how to say it to. So I think for me, I started writing at a very young age, maybe around class 7, 8, seventh grade, eighth grade, that I started writing. And it used to be my small notebook where I used to just scribble. And of course, over the years, then you have the, I would say, okay, courage to share it with someone. Or, in childhood, someone would just snatch your notebook and just look at it, and they're like, what are you scribbling and what are you writing? So, and then you tell that it's just poems, and you give it your own expression, your own name. And I think the connection starts from there. And over these years, like every relationship has its ups and downs, I lost touch with at least poetry for a long time, about 8-10 years, when I was writing very sparsely. But it's just that friend that you um, go back to when you really need, or when you need that expression, okay, self expression, that comfort. And then for the past 8-10 years, I've been writing daily consistently, and that has completely changed my life. And in terms of putting it out there, again, it took a lot of courage. Joined a lot of groups, okay, poetry groups, trying to share my poems, trying to find my expression. And a lot of these are um, critical groups by choice or by nature, because I've not studied poetry, right? I've not studied poetry, and it's just like you mentioned, a passion or a hobby. And then I joined all those critical groups. I started posting, and then I started getting feedback, and then I started improving, because I thought they are really good, and they are telling me something. And it was in one of those discussions that an elderly lady who's been writing for about 50, 60 years. She came and told me, the final poem that you posted has lost its voice. It's no longer yours. It's sounding like someone else. It's sounding like all the comments that you try to incorporate and you try to. And that was the time, Paul, when I realized that it was self expression. It is more about you, it's more about who you are, it's more about what you want to write as a writer, and it's completely different for a reader. If you read my poems, it's at that point in time what you want to take away, and at various points in time it can be different. So I think that was a good life lesson for redefining my relationship with poetry, and then breaking those barriers of trying to validate myself or get validation. And then I started publishing, and there also everybody was like, really, you're going to publish poetry, and who's going to read it? And of course, it's not that well accepted as say mainstream stories or fiction. But then over the last I think 9, 10 years, since 2014, I started publishing my books every year, one book so far. And it's been a wonderful journey. It's been a wonderful journey of self expression and everything. You also write, so I'd like to uh, listen a little more from you about your writing space.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for sharing that, Vijay. And yeah, I really like what you said there, how it's a form of self-expression. And I think it's that self-expression and the way in which we write poetry that sometimes can make it difficult for others to understand. And like you said, sometimes there's poems that I connect with, sometimes there's poems that I read that I try to find that deeper meaning, the angle, the perspective, put myself in the shoes of where the poet's coming from. So poetry can be quite difficult to understand, I think, and it's because it's a form of self-expression where we're coming from, where we're currently at in life. And it's interesting to hear that you got that feedback in terms of how the voice changed and the way in which you're expressing yourself changed. That's really wonderful. So before I share a little bit more and ask a few more questions and share a little bit about my kind of, I'm not as extensive as you. I've wrote poems in the past. I used to write quite a bit, but I've stopped over the past couple of years. I haven't wrote one for quite a while, as of quite some time. But Adele's tuned in. Adele saying hi to both of us. Both of us. It's wonderful to see you here, Adele. Thank you so much for tuning in. And just a reminder, if you're watching in now, we are going to look to pull together some poems. We want to pull together a collection of poems from Coaching Minds members that we can publish in an ebook. So we're just asking that these poems are more inspirational, a little bit of an uplifting energy in them. Then sometimes how we self-express can be quite deep. They can be quite powerful, quite emotional as well. So we just ask that if you are wanting to join a poem with us and to feature in the ebook, then we ask that it just inspires people a little bit. It's a bit uplifting in its expression, in its message. So Adele saying, lovely to see you, Vijaya. Your poetry always touches and inspires. And it does, Vijaya. It really does. And Adele saying, for me, poetry shows the writer's soul, but we as readers take our own message. And that's really true. Do you agree with that, Vijaya?
I do. For the reader, it's completely a different take, and that's the way it should be. It's whatever, like you mentioned, sometimes we just connect to something, and sometimes you don't at least connect to a poem. So it's completely a reader's expression. A reader should never try to understand what the writer is trying to say. They should try to see if it resonates with them at that stage in life, wherever they are. I think that's more, it's more that relationship that we should try to explore as a reader.
Yeah. No, it's quite interesting. It's quite interesting. And, you asked about my poetry. I'm trying to think what it was that stopped me. What was it? Have I found a different outlet? Because for me, I think poetry is an outlet, of a way of expressing yourself. And I'm thinking, if I found a different outlet, what is it that stopped me from writing? What's pulled me away? Maybe it's just too busy to work and not prioritizing as well. But no, I used to write a lot. I used to really enjoy writing it. It is a really good way of self-expression. It's a good way of delivering a message, I think, as well. All poems don't have to be deep, but sometimes when you write, I think even when you write stories, Vijaya, you can put in a bit of a poetic tone into it, I think, which really helps connect with the readers as well. So, but But yeah, I didn't quite have that connection you did when I first found poetry. I have a bit of a sob story for everybody who wants to get involved. So what pulled me into poetry was romance. So I used to write a few romantic poems. I remember the first couple of poems I ever wrote. I gave it to a girl that I really liked in high school, and huge embarrassing moment. She read it out in front of everybody in the playground, and it kind of put me off poetry for a fair few years. So I learned my lesson at a young age to be careful with the power of poetry, and not everybody's going to relate with how you write, and it's not going to be everybody's cup of tea. So that's how I started, was a bit of romance, and then from there kind of it pulled into some deeper meanings, deeper thoughts. When you, I think if you're a big reflective person and you reflect a lot on life, it's, and you've got a lot going on or you've been through a lot, it can really help you just get that out, get those feelings out, manage those feelings, manage those emotions, not just in a way of self-expression, but as a way of kind of healing for you as well. I think poetry can be really healing. Do you agree, Vijaya? Or
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It just frees you so much. It's something like journaling. Journaling is a lot more, flowing and verbiage. Poetry can also be that, and there are so many types of at least poetry: open-ended poetry, abstract poetry. So you really don't have to follow the form, meter, etc. If you really don't want to, you can. It's just a way of self-expression. It has wonderful healing powers. If you want to get into it, if you want to say what's on your mind, right, and you can write it out, you can, and then it becomes, and when you read it even at a later date, it's very, very healing. And uh, like every relationship, you need to explore it, you need to give it time, and you need to believe in it, I think, more. If you don't believe in that relationship, in that connection, it will not have that impact that it should. But wonderful healing powers, like I said, it's just transformed my life to become a better human being in every aspect.
no, it does indeed. And one I don't know. You want to share some poets that inspire you? There's a lot out there, but one that really, I don't know if it's just because we found him through what we did here at Coaching Minds, through the 40 Rules of Love. But one person that really inspires me, that really, I don't know, they're quite deep. Some of his poems can be really difficult to understand, but it's Rumi. I really really connect with what he writes, and I reflect a lot. And it's quite interesting because we've read the 40 Rules of Love, the book, and I know it comes up a lot in what we do here at Coaching Minds because it's been quite an impactful book on many of our coaches and many of our lives when we read it. But just what I reflect on a lot is, if Rumi kind of had that mirror, and whether what truths lie behind the 40 Rules of Love, or how fictitious it is, I don't know. But I reading his poems, reading the 40 Rules of Love, understanding more about Shams Tabriz, all that sort of stuff. It's like Rumi had that mirror to help express his feelings, to help write his thoughts. I don't know if there's anything you resonate with, any poets or things like that, or if you feel like there needs to be some kind of mirror, or how how do you get the flow right, and what was it that inspired you to really put pen to paper?
I think earlier, like I mentioned, as you also mentioned, it's a lot of healing power. So things that you are not able to express. It could be insecurities, it could be dreams, desires that you don't completely believe in, or what you want to achieve, some sadness that you want to let go. I think it's or romance, where you can't express outside. So many romantic poems, and it's really a wonderful way of expressing oneself. And so, really, it's a very strong emotion that pulls you towards poetry when you first attempt it, or when you first lean into it. I think it's something that is on your mind and you want to express, and that is just a medium of expression, or a friend you can express to. I think that's where it starts. And For me, over these years, I just need to get into the flow. I just need to think about something, and then there's that urge to take up that pen, or to really sit and write, or to just type and write it out, right? There's that strong pull and that strong urge, and it doesn't happen always. Or sometimes I just have to free up my mind and say I want to sit and write, and then you know sit and write. So I think it's more about giving it that time, space, energy, focus, priority, as you said. For all the poets that have influenced me. I think more than the poets, it's the poems itself. It's not tied to an individual, it's tied to the poem that they write. It could be Rabindranath Tagore, it could be a lot of the freedom fighters that we've studied through our school, right? People who wrote inspirational poems at that point in time. I think they, and very, very inspirational. And it's not just about the freedom fighting, it's also about how do you look at life. So a lot of Hindi, at least poets. Then you've got Sarojini Naidu. So, like many people over these years who've sort of inspired me, if by Rudyard Kipling, Long Road Home. So, at least Robert Browning's poems. So there are a lot of people who, over these years, have just touched me at some point in time. I think it's more about the poems than it's about the poet or the author. Even Shakespeare, it's not that easy to understand, but there are days and there are moods and there are certain poems that just um, touch your core.
Yeah. I agree. I think the poems are the powerful piece as well. But for me, I just get curious about people and learn more about those people, and I explore a little bit further. So no, it's really great. We've got Priya tuned in, and Priya's also saying that your writing is very touching and inspiring, Vijaya. So you touch a lot of our members at Coaching Minds with the way you write and through your poetry. So really great work, really wonderful stuff. Adelison, a few teachers at school for me, in a way, blocked me from writing as you got given and topic, rules and guidelines. You were put in a box. I don't know. Did you feel like that in different cultures here? You've got Adele over in South Africa. You've got yourself in India. Did you feel like that in school as well? That you had to write, had certain guidelines, certain rules, certain poems that you had to write as well?
Yeah, it was always that. But as I said, somewhere, even as a child, I was always a rebel. So apart from just doing the work that I was supposed to do and the boundaries, I always challenged myself and said, if I didn't have any rules, what would I do? So I think, that very particular urge to just defy, myself and, challenge myself. And as you mentioned, move out of the comfort zone, that pushed me into writing. What would it look like if I didn't have any rules to follow? So I would always do two expressions, one which was always following the rules and one which had the freedom and which didn't follow the rules. So I was always a little on that side, even as a child. So I was always defying things and saying, no, I will not follow rules. Now what? So
A born rebel.
a little, but only, within my cocoon and within my shell, I was the born rebel. But outside, I don't think I ever had the courage to, and I think that very courage comes from my writing. So whatever I couldn't say out loud, I think that, okay, courage is there in my words.
Just on that, interesting question, and this is for anybody who's tuned in who's writing poems as well. I can see a flux of people joining, so that's fantastic. Please note we're talking about World Poetry Day today. We're joined by Vijaya, who is a published poet, and we're asking you to submit some poems to us either by email to academy@coachingmindsglobal.com, or you can post it in our hub, and we're going to collate these together into an ebook. So if you like poetry, maybe this is your first time, and I'm going to leave this conversation in a little bit onto some tips on how you can just start to write and start to express yourself. Myself and Vijaya will talk about that, how you can pick up the pen. And but the question that I have, Vijaya, is, and I think I feel it as well, when I enter the space of writing poems, do you feel like there's a huge element of vulnerability? Like you're
It
making
is.
yourself vulnerable when you write?
It is. It is. As I said, it's those hidden dreams, desires, beliefs, what you don't believe in, insecurity, sadness, some deep pull, something that pulls you towards writing, and that's when you sit down and you say that, okay, let me give it a try. Let me try out this relationship, this connection, and then it's really vulnerable. And sometimes it's even hard to go back and read your own work. There were times when I was struggling through many phases of life, and believe me, I don't go back and read those at least poems. There was a phase in life and I used to write and then I used to tear it and throw it away, so that I never had to become that vulnerable again. So it does give you an option to be vulnerable with yourself, I think, first. And and uh, just be yourself, I'd say.
No, thank you. I didn't catch that last bit there, but I caught the bit. I got up to the bit where you says you sometimes you just write and throw it away because you kind of go back and read those poems, and I feel that as well. You know, times when you can step into that vulnerability, you have that power, that want. You can great write, but sometimes when you do reflect back at some of the stuff you've written, you can think, you know, what frame of mind was I in? You know, but that needed to be expressed at that time, and it can be a bit cringy to read back some of the stuff that you've written. But again, if you're writing in a good frame of mind, it can be good to go back to the ones that you've written in a good frame of mind when you've expressed yourself. So no, I agree. I think vulnerability is a huge part, and I feel like vulnerability could be a block as well for some people to why they don't want to step into that space of picking up the pen, put it to paper, and starting to write what comes to their mind. Because I think one of the myths that a lot of people believe in when it comes to poetry is that your writing has to rhyme. And it doesn't have to rhyme to be a poem. It might have a bit more power, a bit more energy in it, a bit more inspiring if you have a bit of a rhyme, but it's not necessary. I'm sure you back me up, Vijay. It's not necessary that your writing can rhyme. It's expressing yourself in a way that, like you mentioned earlier on, it could be abstract, could be just the way that you write, the words that you use to express yourself can give it power.
Yeah, just keep it simple. Just write whatever is on your mind. It's, as I said, you are exploring your relationship with that, uh, you know, very powerful medium, and just give it that space time and allow it to make a difference in your life, and just write. Doesn't matter, it doesn't have to rhyme, you don't have to have the meter, the rhythm, you don't have to know poetry forms, you don't have to really adhere to any rules, you really don't have to do any of that, you can just write and allow that medium to become your friend, and who knows, you may find a friend for life, like I did.
Excellent. That's really great. And I really feel as well that going back to what we were sharing earlier on with the self-expression, with how we write as poets, with how it's interpreted from individuals, when there's a rhyme or there's a rhythm into that poem, it can be difficult for, whilst we're writing it in that rhythm, whilst we're writing it in that form, people who read it, especially if they read it out loud, might not pick up that rhythm, pick up that energy, which gives that poem power. I don't know if you felt that before as well. That sometimes when you read a poem, it can be difficult to read if you don't get the right rhythm in the way that it's written.
Yeah, that's true. And more so if it's a little forced rhyme, where you don't really need to rhyme, but you're just writing it, in a forceful manner just for it to rhyme. So I think that's where it comes. And I think we are all very musically tuned to rhythm, rhyme, and things like that. That's why we closely connect with music, with the pulse and the tone. And that's what we try to seek and find. But like I said, you don't have to put poetry into a box, or you don't have to visualize it in that manner, and that is where some of us, we try to forcefully fit it, and maybe it doesn't sound so easy for the reader.
No. Yeah, no, definitely, definitely. And before we start to go into some tips for people who might be thinking about writing and how we can start them to help get past that writer's block, or just to find the courage to be vulnerable and start to write what they feel, what they think. You know, World Poetry Day is all about linguistic expression and how it can be understood across cultures. But do you feel like there's a barrier when it comes to poetry? And it's something I found when I started to learn Spanish, that if you write something in one language, when it's translated into another language, it completely loses its power, it loses its rhythm, it loses its artistic way of expression. So I think that whilst we're celebrating it across cultures, I feel like there's a bit of a limitation on how that can go across languages. I don't know if you feel the same thing.
Yeah, it's very difficult. The same thing could happen to a song. It could completely be different in its meaning, in its rhyme, in its rhythm, if you want to translate it, because then you are trying to fit within the parameters of that particular language, but try to keep the tone of the song, or the tone of the poem. So you can keep the tone and maybe that, but a literal translation or just translating as is hardly ever works. I think that's the same for any thing, if it's a song or if it's poetry. I think it's a little more easier in terms of fiction, because it's a story and you are able to bring that storyline in, but otherwise it's quite difficult. Even I think when you are into watching movies, and if they are translated into some other language, it may or may not be that, you know word to word easy. The story will be told, Okay, the tone or the rhythm or what you want to say, it will be told, but literal translation hardly ever works.
No, and I think it's a lot more. It has a lot more impact on poetry than it does on watching a movie or translating a story or something like that, because the words that you choose when you express yourself can hold the power of the poem, and that word translated into a different language can have completely different power, different length, different size, and it can really, like you said, it can affect the rhythm of the flow. I don't know, just a question for anybody. Vijay, have you ever wrote poems in a different language? Adele, have you ever tried to write a poem in Afrikaans and compared it to something in English and tried to literally translate it? And anybody else who's tuned in, I just feel like it loses its power when you translate it.
Yeah, I used to write in Hindi first. So as I said, Hindi was what really pulled me in, and I used to write in Hindi, and I never attempted to translate. I think I attempted to translate it once in English. It was a complete blunder and a fiasco, and I was like, "What is this? I wrote something else and it sounds something else here. It doesn't sound the same." So no, after that, I don't think I ever attempted. But there are people who are very good translators, who are very proficient in both languages, and if they are very proficient in both languages, they do a wonderful job, like people who've spent their life understanding both the languages and things like that. So I think there are some very powerful translations also, though maybe not word to word, but it's as powerful in a different language when they have sort of maintained that tone. But I think they've done the work over the years, and they are a lot expert translators, I'd say.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think translation I don't think is possible, but I think writing a different poem,
Differently, yeah.
maybe with a similar topic in that language, can be power. Because as I
Yes.
mentioned, just because the words that we use in English, for example, that we choose to use have that power, have that meaning behind that poem, when you translate it, say for example Spanish. So the reason why I'm thinking about this is because I'm learning Spanish. I translate them in Spanish. The words don't have power, but I know a lot of powerful Spanish words that hold the different power that when translated into English doesn't have that same power neither. So I think it's really, I think it's just a form of rewriting in that language. Different words have different rhyme, especially if you want the rhyme and the rhythm. You definitely need to rewrite it, because when you literally translate it, your rhyme's gone. It sounds really, really funny. But I think if
That's
you
true.
just want to get that power in the words, you can maybe choose to select a different word to write it. So just
That's
interesting
true.
thought that I had on the, because we're talking about linguistic expression and how it's understood across cultures. But I think sometimes the language, as Adele's put here, things can be lost in translation, and you can lose the context and the power as well. So Adele's coming here. I did, and that is a fact. Let's just say it turns to H. I don't know what H is, but we'll go with it. And that is exactly that made me feel I can't write poetry, as it was taught in school. That is a mental block I have. Thank you for highlighting it. So I'm guessing she's talking about rhyming there, one of the myths that we have. Sorry, I feel like you wanted to share something there, Vijaya.
No, no, I'm just enjoying this entire conversation, and everyone is interacting, so it's just making me smile.
No, excellent. And I was going to put you on the spot today as well, but I'm not going to. I was going to ask you if you'd like to read out one of the poems that you've written or something like that today. But if you don't have one at hand, if you feel uncomfortable, please don't. But I don't know if there's anything you'd like to share today.
No, I will post something later. I haven't written anything today so far, though it's World Poetry Day. I will write a little now, and I'll definitely share it on our uh, you know blog as well as the hub. So I will do that.
No, excellent. No, I just didn't know if you had a copy of your book in front of you that you could have read something out, or something like that. It's just something that came to my mind there. So, um,
They're all longer ones. They're all really, really long ones. I haven't.
yeah. And yeah, I think the other important thing to share what you, because I really inspired by what you do. You don't just write a lot of poetry, but every year, or for the past, well, since I've known you for the past 3 years, you've taken part in a 24-hour poetry challenge. Do you just want to share a little bit more about what that is for the audience, and how that works in terms of self-expression and your writing?
So we have a 24-hour poetry marathon that happens sometime in June. So this is worldwide. All the poets join, anybody can join, so there is, and it's just online, and the ask is to write one poem per hour. You do have prompts, you do have multiple prompts. There are some visual prompts, there are some prompts to help you write, so you can adhere to the prompt or you can write your own poem, so there's no restriction. So the only ask is for 24 hours. You have the half marathon as well as the full marathon, so you can sign up for 12 hours marathon. half marathon, or you can sign up for the 24 hours one. So the ask is every hour you write a poem. You write a new poem every hour, either using the prompt, or you can write anything of your own. And it's wonderful, and we read the poems of others, over the next 8-10 days, 2 weeks, and we learn so much, and different forms of expression, different ways of expression. And over these years, this challenge, I think I've participated for 6 years now, I don't even recall, but 6-7 years. And every time I learned a new form. So the challenge is to learn that new form at that time. And so how do you manage your time, how do you manage your energy throughout, how do you pull, and we all understand it's the first draft of the poem, but then how do you manage it. And I just enjoy that space. And there are other groups who would have at least quarterly marathons, or quarterly 12 hours once, which I'm trying out. But this one, the yearly one, once in a year, I definitely have done it for the last 5-6 years, and it's wonderful.
Excellent, no, and it's really great. It's really inspiring because for me that's it's improvised. It's improv, a lot of improv there, to do a 24-hour challenge. So really inspiring stuff for Jaya. So a lot of practice, a lot of experience in writing poetry, which is wonderful. So if you're tuning in, we are looking to collate together a list of inspiring poems as part of World Poetry Day. But it doesn't have to be submitted today. Take your time, think about what you want to write. And I think what we'll do is we'll open it up in different languages. If you're comfortable in Spanish, if you're comfortable in French, if you're comfortable in Afrikaans, Adele, whatever language is your dominant language or your primary language, feel free to write a poem in that language. We will translate it just to make sure that all the words are acceptable and PG. So please keep it to an acceptable level. But yeah, we will accept poems from different languages in this collation. And so some interesting discussion points, Vijaya. Thank you so much for sharing your experience and your thoughts behind poetry today. And I think just to leave the audience with some tips. So if they want to submit a poem, maybe they're thinking about it, maybe they need to find the courage to put the pen to paper. What tips would you have, if you had any, for people who maybe be thinking about writing but are not taking that step into it?
Yeah, so it's very difficult. It's like saying that if you want to do, like we always say, you have to take the first action. Like if you want to really do it, so the first thing is, do you want to do it? If you don't want to do it, there is really no compulsion, and you can ask yourself this question any day, I'd say. If you want to do it, then just take a paper, pen, or if you're comfortable typing it out, just whatever is on top of your mind. If there's something that you want to visualize, like it's like meditation, you can visualize something that you aspire for, you can visualize a space that calms you, any topic that really you want to, or there's something on your mind and you want to write it down. There's some desire that you don't believe in, that you want to explore, any insecurity, you want to write something inspiring, or you really want to write about small joys of life. What brought you joy today? Simple things, what brought you joy today, right? What will bring you a smile on your face today? Like, what would it be that would bring a smile on your face today? So have something like that on your mind, which is it can be as deep as you want to be, it can be as simple as it wants to be. And just try and write it down and see what's on your mind. It could be 3 lines, 4 lines, any rhythm, any pattern that you want to follow. Just write it down. And the challenge that I also give to myself at times is, I try to write the same thing again on a different day or at a different time, and what comes out is completely different. It's never the same. I've never been able to write the same poem, or even able to recreate the same thing again. There have been times when I've lost my work because my machine restarted or something. It didn't have battery, and I was never able to recreate it the same thing again. So it's very interesting. Just write that same topic on another day, and see how it shapes up. Just allow it to flow. But the first thing is, you should want to do it. If you do not want to do it, please, there's nothing to really at least force you to do it. So
Yeah, excellent. Thank
just
you.
write what's on your mind. There's nothing, it's as simple as that.
Yeah. Now, I think you're right. I think it's just a case of picking up the pen and going with it. You don't have to submit it. You don't have to do anything with it. Only you can read it back. And then once you've got, those thoughts down, just start to play with it until you feel happy and satisfied that you've got it in a way that that kind of connects with yourself. And then if you feel like you want to submit that to us, submit that to us. Maybe you've written poems already that are quite inspiring. You want to have them featured in this ebook. You don't have to rewrite something new for the sake of today, but just share it with us, something we've never seen before, so we can connect with you and we can pick up the messages in this World Poetry Day 2023. So thank you so much for your tips there, Vijaya. And I think the important point you says you've got to want it, you've got to feel it to go there. I think. Um,
I have something that I would like to read out. So I just got my
yeah,
book. This is the
go for it.
latest one, En Soul. Okay, uh, En Soul. So it's very simple. It's a small one, and I haven't read out much in the past, so I hope you're all able to feel it. It's titled "Did the Doorbell Ring?" When the doorbell rings, you wonder who is on the other side. You try to guess. Some guesses match when you're anticipating them. When the doorbell rings at odd hours, you wonder who is on the other side. What does the visitor bring? The curiosity, the anticipation, till you see who is there and what they want. Every doorbell that rings teaches us the balance between comfort zone and how we handle change.
Interesting. Thank you for sharing that. Quite a deep
Simple
meaning.
things like, how do you handle simple things like someone who's ringing a doorbell? So simple
Yeah.
like that, as
But with
simple
the
as that.
deep meaning towards the end now.
Yeah, so it's all about, so I always try to find life lessons in the simplest of things that happen to us every day. So sometimes you don't even know what mood you bring into it, right? Sometimes if you're irritated, how do you smile? So how do you smile at change? So I always feel that a doorbell ring is as simplified as a change, or it's a metaphor for change. And then how do you welcome that change, and how do you welcome that unanticipated visitor, expected visitor? So many things.
No, wonderful. No, thank you so much for sharing that, Vijay. I really, really appreciate it. And yeah, I have to find that inspiration today. I told you I haven't wrote poems in a long time, but I'm actually going to push myself today to write something new. Let's see what I can come up with. Anybody got any idea of topics? Just throw it to me so I can get past that mental block and I'll write something on that topic. We'll give it a go. It's World Poetry Day after all. We have to step outside of our comfort zones. We have to give it a go, even if we don't feel it. Try and give it a go because it can be beneficial for us. So I'm gonna push myself to write something today. And I encourage everybody who's tuning in to do the same as well. Vijay, you're shaking your head, or you're nodding your head. I
No,
couldn't.
no, I'm like, just write what makes you smile, as simple as that. What are you grateful for today? Something very, you don't have to push yourself, just like, if you wanted to really write a gratitude note, which is maybe in a form of poetry rather than a prose, what would you say? What brings you, what makes you smile today? I think all of us have been together for, nearly 40 minutes now. So, and we've all smiled, multiple times today, and we've all reconnected. Many of us, we've not even spoken for a while now. So, just what makes you smile, as simple as that.
No, excellent. And thank you so much for that, Vijaya. Thank you for your tips. Thank you for sharing your experience. Thank you for the discussion points, and thank you for your poem. It's been a really wonderful 40 minutes with you to talk about World Poetry Day. And thank you, Adele, Priya, everybody else who I've seen tune in and tune out. And if you are watching the replay, please do submit your poems, whether you want to put it through email, whether you've got any questions, or if you just want to post it in the hub and put it straight out here. And Adele is saying, Paul, here's an idea B. You want me to write a poem about a bee? Okay, I'll try and think of something a little bit more deeper. I'll see if I can bring the bee into it, but we'll go from there. Um, so yeah, cool. Um, Excellent. So thank you so much, Vijaya. Thank you, everybody who's tuned in. Really wonderful discussion. And we just want to encourage you guys to go out there. Even if you don't submit it to us, please just acknowledge World Poetry Day. Give yourself a go. Give some self expression on a bit of paper and just see how it feels and what it brings for you. And that's a good time to finish as my light goes off.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. It was wonderful. And, just feel free to reach out to me and share your poem just as a, self expression, even if you don't want to submit it. I'm looking forward to reading all your poems. I would just love to be a part of you and share something with you on this day. So, okay, feel free to reach out to me and share it with Paul and me. And it would be lovely to read your, self expression and your poems.
Yeah. But I encourage you not to send it to Vijaya, just post it straight in the hub so you can see your beautiful writing. So
Yeah,
get it straight in the hub.
sure.
Get it straight in the hub. But Vijaya is there to help and support as well. So please reach out. You can find her.
Absolutely.
You can find her in our Cushy Minds Hub. You can find her on all the relevant social media channels. So on Facebook, if you just type in Vijaya Garisanki, you can find it there as well.
Yes, please
Excellent.
share it with us on the hub.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Vijaya. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a wonderful rest of your week, and we look forward to reading your poems today. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye.